What's up, guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today we're checking out Chord Jam, a new plugin by Audio Modern, who are very kindly sponsoring this video, so thank you so much to them. This is a chord progression generator plugin with a ton of banks of chords and ways to intuitively sequence them, add all sorts of timing adjustments, and even have it generate entire progressions for you, and I'll get into all of that. I'm going to mainly walk you through this first beat, but I've also got a second one that relies a little bit more on more generative stuff, and once again, we'll get into that in a little bit. This track uses Chord Jam in a couple of forms. First of all, there's the part that you heard in the intro with just the chord progression, and I've also got this ARP track. And we'll get into that in a second. But first of all, I want to walk you through how I have this routed, because it's actually pretty straightforward. So I've got Chord Jam loaded up just on its own virtual instrument. That's just chilling there, record armed. And then let me show you this main chord patch. This is accepting MIDI from the Chord Jam plugin. So if I go to Route right here, I can hit Add New Receive and then select a track to receive MIDI from. In this case, I've already got this Chord Jam track set to feed MIDI into this FM patch. That's one way of doing it, and that's something that allows you to feed this plugin into multiple different synths at once, multiple different tracks, have all that good to go. Or you can just drag this entire sequence as a MIDI file. Let me show you that. Boom. And then you can edit it from there. I'm not going to use that in this case, but that is super nice to have. So for the Chord Jam plugin itself, you can choose from a bunch of different scales and a bunch of different chord types. In this case, I went for something a little bit spicy, and then I can just start trying out chords across my MIDI keyboard. And it'll start automatically filling out those chords. And let me just show you, we've got a ton of banks to work with in terms of chord types. And these are somewhat selected to sound good together. So you've got a ton of room for experimentation, but at the same time, you are going to be able to get something that sounds good pretty quickly. And you can kind of choose how much you want to push yourself in terms of something predictable versus something straightforward. There's a lot of opportunity for experimentation here, and this is something I can definitely use as a jumping off point to build melodies and entire beats around. I've got some other stuff going on in here as well. You've got a ton of control over what each of the individual voices of your chords are doing, velocity controls, and this is quite fun, time. And you can even kind of roll the dice on timing. You'll see how these light up kind of at different times. It's doing this strum pattern, and you can change how that behaves using this time feature right here. There's also the ARP feature that I'll get to in a second. So that's how you select individual chords and shape them to the vibe that you're going for. From there, you can actually jump into the sequencer, which I've got 4 of these chords laid out here. And you can change a bunch of these parameters on a chord by chord basis, which we'll see again in a second. For instance, I've got this first chord laid out here, C minor 7, flat 9. This just runs through on a sequencer grid. Let me just show you what this sounds like if I shorten it a bunch. You can see the playhead moving along here. I've got a ton of control over sequencing this progression right within the plugin itself. So if I want to switch out this chord, I totally can. I've got that control at my fingertips. And so I want to switch this out for what it originally was. There we go. And of course, you can also turn that off and just drag individual chords in, or in this case, now that I do have a sequence, I can drag that sequence in like I showed earlier. That's absolutely fantastic to have. That's really cleanly designed, and it looks intimidating at first, but once I got into it, it was super straightforward. To walk you through what I've got going on here, I've got these FM chords from FM8. I've also got an additional layer here. This is a rendered out version, pitched up an octave, and then sent through the super shimmery reverb. So layered with the original. And then under all of that, I've got these chords from Massive. Really driving home the space feel. And then I just manually programmed in a little bass part with the drum part. And all of that was sparked by the chord progression that I came up with using Chord Jam. Finally, let me show you this ARP, because this is pretty interesting. I mentioned that you have a lot of control on a chord-by-chord basis in Chord Jam. So I've got a second instance of Chord Jam running here, feeding that ARP track. And what I've done is kept basically the same chords, but I've activated the ARP. And in this case, we've got down and up, down and up, down and up. And then for that last chord, it goes up only. And for the last little bit of that chord, it goes randomly. And I've doubled the rate, which is why it does that little double time thing at the very end. I've also got this other layer that I was playing around with earlier, which is probably a little much, if we're being honest. So you've got a lot of variation to play with here and a lot of flexibility. So let me jump into the other beat. This one's fairly stripped back, especially compared to the other one. But what I want to use it to show is the little robot feature here. You can have it lay out a chord progression for you. And no, I don't think this is cheating. I think this is using an unusual source of inspiration as a jumping off point. And you're going to definitely have to adjust this to taste to get the exact feel you're looking for. And that's kind of the point. The robot can be a starting point, and from there you can build and adjust. So you've got a bunch of different chord pattern types in here that you can start with, and you can even save your own. You can choose, once again, your scale type, chord type, all that kind of stuff. And it can lay out a chord progression for you. So here's what I've got. Fairly simple, but a good starting point for kind of a poppy little dancey tune. So I wrote this melody over the top of it, and I did this fairly quickly, and here's what that sounds like. And I could definitely develop this a lot further, flesh out the progression more, flesh out the melody more, probably grow it to 4 bars long. But this is just to show you that the robot mode can be used as a jumping off point for melodic ideas. And this is only scratching the surface of the potential of a plugin like this. I've often said that one great way to write a catchy melody is to start with a chord progression, and this makes that process a lot easier and gives you a lot of options to work with, even if you're less experienced with music theory than you'd like to be. And I definitely anticipate using this as a jumping off point for track ideas in the future. So that is it for today. Thank you so much to Audio Modern for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to check the plugin out yourself, you can click or tap the link in the description. And if you'd like to see more music production videos, including another one with a different plugin by the same company, you can click or tap somewhere on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.